Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in the world, welcome back to The Caring Economy with me, your host, Toby Usnik. Today, I'm especially proud and happy and honored to sit down with someone who's only been not just a distinguished priest and scholar, but also a dear, long-standing friend for decades. Father Patrick Ryan has, over the decades, been on a journey of service and helping others. He has an incredible experience in deep scholarship, dedicated service, and a profound commitment to pastoral care. After earning his BA at the St. Leo University, Father Ryan was ordained in the Diocese of Albany in 1976. He looks much younger than he is, and has been enriching his calling ever since through studies in education, theology, counseling, and ministry. His ministry, which is profound, has included impactful years across New York State, New Jersey, and the East Coast of the United States, but also goes globally in terms of his impact. He has been at the Diocese of Paterson in New Jersey, guiding communities, supporting parishioners, and pursuing his own personal academic all the while. Father Ryan, Patrick, welcome to the Caring Economy. I'm really honored to have you and grateful.
Thank you, Tony. Toby. I'm happy to be here.
He knows my
I
name.
need to get your name.
That tells you how good we are, right? So we always begin, Patrick, by asking our guests to say a little bit about like 3 or 4 minute digest of their life. Like, where were you raised? How were you raised? Did you have mentors, pivots, aha moments, failures? So give us a sort of like from the Staten Island to today, like what's your life story?
Well, as you mentioned, I was born on Staten Island, and I love being raised there. It's a great place to raise children.
Mhm.
I would spend the summers with my grandparents. I'm one of five, and I'm the oldest. And my mother often said that I thought I was an only child till I was about 12. And going over my grandparents' house, that sort of was a self-fulfilling prophecy. They lived in I don't even know if it was a blue collar neighborhood, but it was well integrated, well mixed. We had people, and this is like in the early 50s, we had people from Germany on one side, people from Poland on the other side. We had Protestants and Catholics. We had a lovely Black family in front of us and behind us. And I would say that there was a great give and take. There was no prejudice that I could perceive.
Mm.
People took care of themselves and they took care of each other. And one person had chickens and they would raise chickens, and then they give the eggs to us. And my grandfather used to have this very large tomato and corn garden, and he would give tomatoes out to everybody and corn out to everybody. The man next to us was a carpenter, and I remember him building us a picnic table. And that's just the way it went. And it was kind of interesting that you have all of these people with degrees today. And it's not that I'm anti-education or anything,
You have a
but
few degrees yourself.
yes, but
He's being modest.
uh, but without degrees, they learned how to communicate with people and live with people and appreciate each other.
Mm.
And I think, if anything, that's what education should do for all of us. And so I've been, in the academic field for years and years, and I've seen many people with doctorates who they can't get along with each other.
Mm.
And so you wonder if, like my grandmother, who I question if she even got out of high school, she had an innate sense of kindness and thoughtfulness and sensitivity. And whatever she had and however she got that, I think people in college need that more today than ever.
So you got your sort of sense of place and community with that upbringing in Staten Island, but then how did you find your calling? I mean, you don't just go from
Well,
a kid in Staten Island to becoming a very successful and happy priest.
one of the things that happened is my grandmother died when I was in fifth grade. This
Mm.
is the grandma I'm speaking of. And I think that pushed me towards God to try to figure out what that was about and
Mm.
why did he take her, and did I do anything wrong to cause it? There were a whole lot of really existential questions in fifth grade, 10 years old. I answered as best I could, but I knew she was a very religious woman, and I think that did more to lead me in
A direction of
the
sorts.
church, yeah, than anything else. I also had some wonderful priests in our parish. And as I was through seminary, some wonderful mentors that would come along and they would sort of just share their wisdom with me and
Mentor you in a way.
meant
So there you are, like 16, 17 in high school at Staten Island, a Catholic high school, I believe, right?
St. Peter's.
So what, I mean, I think our younger listeners in particular are going to wonder, like, what makes someone at that incredibly cross-current part of life, young, old, hormones, puberty, all that stuff, going off to college, what made you think I'm going to enter the seminary?
Well, to begin with, I sensed that God was calling me when I was going through all that with my grandmother in fifth grade. And then I think I put much of it on hold, even in college. And it life has a way, if you're open to things,
Mm.
speaking to you. And
Mhm.
I guess there were signs that came along that I interpreted. Maybe another person wouldn't, but
Mm.
I interpreted that I saw much of the good that the priests in my parish were doing, and even the priests in my grandmother's parish, they were really connected with people and really helping them and making a difference in their lives. And I wanted to do that.
Good for you. A nice way to honor her and the background you had. So, tactically, then, you decide this is your calling, this is your study, this is what you're going to do. Give us sort of like the quick study of the vocational track. You don't just go to college and become a priest, right? There's a real
Well,
time-tested and very specific way of doing that. How does one become a priest?
I'll tell you though, there was a time in my college studies that I stopped going to church because I there were a lot of questions that I had, and I just sort of pulled away. And I remember thinking to myself, this is my grandmother's faith and my parents' faith. I want it to be my own. And so I kind of pulled away, not for very long, but for a couple months,
Just
eh,
to question it.
just to question it.
Yeah.
And, I think we always say that the best Catholics are converts, people who came from somewhere else
Yes.
and they question things and they studied and everything. And I think that was part of me that I just wanted to be away from it for a while and make it mine
And be more objective. Yeah.
instead of my grandparents or my parents. And I remember a friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine, came down to college for my graduation, and I had not said anything to her. And the priest, the vocation director, they have someone who will accept you and
Coach
sponsor
you, sort
you.
of. Yeah.
And he knocked on the door and he said, "Who's Patrick Ryan?" And I said, "I." He said, "I'm Father Stegman." I ran out of the room and closed the door, and nobody knew what was going on except Father Stegman and I. So that was kind of funny, but the more I listened, and I knew very little about what seminary was. Usually, well, not usually, but many times, guys will be in a college seminary, and they have a background. And I went in with a degree in sociology, and I want to tell you that the first year there was. I thought they were speaking a different language, and it was all jargon,
Yeah.
and one of the things I remember the professor talking about the synoptic gospels, and that's Matthew, Mark, and Luke, not John. And so he's talking about it as if all of us knew what that was.
Synoptic.
And I'm saying, synoptic, what is that about? And so there was a lot of catching up to do,
Yeah.
you know.
You were remedial.
Yes. On the other
Only
hand,
once in your life.
well, on the other hand, I think I have almost more degrees in sociology, psychology,
Yeah.
the social sciences than I do in theology.
Yeah.
And I think they helped me.
And it probably made you a little bit more rounded or perhaps see more objective than your
Yeah.
peers.
And the other thing, and it's nice that I have all these degrees, but I think a degree tells you that you took a course or a series of courses and you did well in them, and they give you a degree.
Yeah,
I
you're good
think
at following directions.
and I don't think a degree does anything more than that. And sometimes we'll look at somebody with a doctorate in, say, in education, and this is just theoretical, and they're telling a principal how to run a school
Yeah.
when they themselves have never run a school.
Yeah.
So I think there's practical wisdom, and then there's academic stuff, and
Amen.
and we shouldn't put this might be a little bit off off the
Topic,
course,
yeah.
but I was at a teachers convention at the Jacob Javits Center, and I was with a priest from California, a Franciscan, and I said to this priest, "You want to go over and visit my grandmother? She's over at the Mary Manning
Very
Walsh
well.
Nursing
Yeah,
Home."
great nursing home in Manhattan.
Wonderful. And so he said, all right. So we went over. And at that time, I was studying at Fordham. And I was just about to get my second master's. And I was the only one in my family that went past a bachelor's degree. And I said, oh, Nana, I'm just finishing my second master's degree. And she said to me, Patrick, thermometers have degrees, and look where people stick them. And and the poor priest, I almost had to pick up off the floor. And he said to me later, why would she say that to you? And I said, well, Nana's very Irish, and the worst thing you could be is proud. And she thought I was bragging. I had the expression, a
Yeah.
big head. And, I don't think I did, but she did. And so she just
I love
cut me
that.
down
She humbled you.
to
She
that.
reminded you.
She
Yeah. So
reminded me,
you took the
yes,
lesson. Yeah.
yes.
So how does what, so you finish your academic training, you're qualified, you're vetted. So then you get your first assignment. How does that process go?
Well, it's not that simple. First of all, you're supposed to have at least pretty close to a degree in philosophy. They would say that. Then you have to go, and it's 4 years of theology.
Mhm.
Then you take a practicum. You go out and get some pastoral experience. And then after that, you would get ordained. And so it wasn't easy, and I was very impatient. I wanted to get ordained more than anything. And I think I cut some corners that maybe I shouldn't have, and maybe a little more time studying or reflecting would have been good for me.
Can you
As
say more? Like what kinds of corners, what life hacks are there for
well,
priests in training?
well, for instance, you're supposed to have that maybe 30 credits in philosophy, as I mentioned. I didn't have that. I think I had six. And I think the dean of students missed that, and he just put me in theology. So I cut, too late
Yeah.
now, I cut 24 credits
In philosophy.
in philosophy. And philosophy helps you think. It's
That's the way of thinking about thinking.
and it's progressive. And I think to get in there. And the other thing was I was very active when I was in college. I was involved in the student senate. I was vice president of government, all those things. And I like that. When you're in seminary, you're just sort of taught to absorb
Yeah.
rather than,
So sorry, but what happens when the rubber meets the road, so to speak? So you start to get your practicum, your vocational training, you're out and about. I would imagine that real quickly you realize like, yeah, I'm meant for this, or maybe I'm not. I mean, I wonder if there's a lot of guys who kind of trade out of it after a bit, but
well,
you
yes,
you
if
didn't.
in the equivalent of a bachelor's degree in seminary, you would say you were in philosophy, you were studying philosophy.
Yeah.
Then you go into what they call theology. And theology, we started with 60, we get down to 40. And then I think by the time ordination came around, we were down to 28. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of soul searching going on. And, the 70s were wild days. And,
Oh yeah.
and in spite of what we think, culture has such an impact on the church. And we would like to think it's the other way around. I mean, maybe it's a tennis match, but all of
The movements, the war, the sexual revolution,
all of
HIV,
that
AIDS, gay, all that stuff.
that
Vietnam.
had an effect on the students and even the faculty. Sometimes they would come up short with knowing what an answer was or a solution was. And the other thing I think people think the church has to have an answer for every issue there is.
Mhm.
And last night I was listening to somebody talk about transsexuals. I don't know what that's about. I don't understand it, but I don't make a judgment on it.
You know a human being is a human being.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but they come up and they say, "Well, what do you think of this? What do you think?" Well,
Yeah.
I'm just me.
Would you agree with me? I think the world is very binary now because of social. The world is not, but the perception of the world is binary. People, because of social media in particular, and because of politics, people want left, right, up, down, but there's no room in between. There's no centrist views. Do you find that people want that answer from their priest or from the church because they want a quick fix when there really isn't a quick fix other than being
Yeah.
open-minded and empathetic?
Yeah, and you get that when you're dealing with people who are separated and getting divorced,
Stress.
or people have children who are gay. They come in with all sorts of issues, and you do the best you can, and you let them know they're loved, and you'll be with them and you'll support them. I had in one of my parishes a woman who was going through this big thing, and a parishioner said, "Oh, go see Father Patrick." And so I bring her in, and she wanted to become a man, and she was in a relationship with another woman. And trust me, we never had any of that in
Growing up,
seminary.
yeah.
And I think in college it was just unheard of. And I was supposed to come up with something. And the issue was, I think, for her, that she wanted to be welcomed. And I spent 2 hours trying to convince her that she was welcome. People didn't know who
Yes.
she was and blah, blah, blah. She never came back.
You meet people where they are.
And you try to, I still think Jesus is the way and the truth and the light. And I think if we had more people believed in Jesus, our world would not be as crazy
As it
as it
is.
is now.
So, well, I'm Catholic, raised Catholic. I'm proudly Catholic in identification. I don't practice in the way that you do, but I do believe in the same way. I would say it differently. I do believe that service is the only way forward for anybody, particularly a real leader. Leaders are of service to something higher and bigger than themselves. To me, that's Christian. But I wonder, is that message percolating now with young folks? If you think about 30
Yeah.
years ago and today, what's different? What's the same?
Well, I'd have to push it back even 50 years ago. When I was growing up on Staten Island, we had 36 parishes and we had 30 schools. Everybody on Staten Island was Catholic. You went to a Catholic high
You had a
school.
monopoly.
Yes, and it wasn't so bad. And when people
If you're
would
a
say,
Catholic.
yeah, people would say, where do you live? And you would just say the church. You
Yeah,
wouldn't say the neighborhood or and so that worked. What I think though is people who are good, if they're practicing their faith and receiving the Eucharist, they're better. And
correct.
and I think
Practice, discipline, of course.
and I think a lot of people underestimate the value of listening to scripture on Sunday, being in part of a community and receiving the Lord in the Eucharist. You can't beat that in any way. So
Yeah. Well, I would equate that to rigor that comes with if you're an athlete training for the Olympics, or yes, it will always make you stronger and better if you are being challenged and provoked and thinking about things
mm,
anew. But are you more optimistic,
oh,
less optimistic
your
about where
your
we are?
your question was 50 years ago, everyone was just where I was from, everyone was Catholic. Today it's different, but we're seeing if the surveys we're doing are accurate, that within the past year there's a real upswing in young people
Coming
returning
back,
to
yeah.
church. And I even
Or finding it for the first time, like our
or
vice president.
yes. And even I saw a study where in London, for the first time since the Reformation, there'd be more Catholics
Wow.
in London than there are Anglicans. And
You hear that, Henry VIII?
and I'm not sad about that at all. I think though, when you get down to it, and I don't like to be basic, but there's either a God or there isn't a God. That's the only option.
Yeah.
Jesus was God's son or he wasn't God's son. We believe he was. So then you move a step further and you say, what did Jesus do for us? And I think a lot of people feel like God needs us when in fact it's we need God. God is God. God doesn't need anything.
Yeah. And
So
that's pretty universal with most faiths, right? I
uh,
mean, you would think that
yeah, well, there are so many people without faith today that
that's
that
the
population
opportunity, I think, right? They
is
haven't been,
shrinking. Yeah.
yeah, but there's the opportunity. You're seeing it already, I guess, based on that research, that maybe some people are open, younger people are open to the possibility. So
Well, you
the
look at our
pendulum swings a bit, I
you
guess.
look at our country though,
Yep.
and what are we going to find in our government right now? And people can argue with me over that, but I say not a lot. You go to Russia and Putin, and what are they going to find over there? Not a lot. And so I think when people are brought up to trust their governments, and then they see the governments not being really what they should be, I think the obvious thing is, well, then where do we go?
Well, some would say, speaking with Russia, that the Russian Orthodox Church is very much in sync with President Putin. And now we're seeing a very strong religious tie with our administration. And I wonder, do you think, is it fair to say that politics and religion are getting more tied up than is perhaps healthy or objective?
Well,
Or
I hope not, but I think the Russian Orthodox Church has sold out to
seems so.
the
Yeah.
cameras, and it seems like no matter what Putin does, they agree with it. I would think that we are at our best as a church when we challenge injustice, and
Correct.
I would say and maybe they have done it, I'm not sure of it, but I wish our bishops would have come out a little stronger on what's going on over in Gaza.
Yes.
And I wish our bishops, and they're coming out with a statement now on what we're doing with undocumented people. We need to be walking with them, period. And I listen to some very conservative priests, and they'll say, well, every country has to have borders. And I believe in all that. The reality, though, is we've had people here for 20 years who have never violated a law. They've raised a family,
Pay
they're
taxes.
paying taxes, they have jobs, some of them have little companies, and they're as wonderful a citizen as
Yeah.
those of us who were born here. And to have this what's that group
This
called?
this false choice.
ICE.
Oh, ICE off. Yeah. Coming
I,
in and
they're
arresting people in
I
masks.
they look like thugs to me,
Yep.
and they're cruel and they're unempathetic. And what I remember the president saying is we're going to get rid of criminals and gang members and violent people. It seems like they're missing the mark on a lot of it. I'm
Correct.
glad we get rid of the violent people and
But a little transparency would be helpful,
yeah,
right?
yes.
So tell me, what is the answer? What do you have any thoughts about what, like I always cite things like sports, music, entertainment, animals. We both are dog people. If you connect with people over these things that make us human and are uplifting and inclusive, that seems to me to be one way to help bring our nation back together. But I wonder, at least with regard to the church, how do you help counter that trend with ICE or the treatment of
I
immigrants?
think there's two things. We still have to be personal.
Human.
People coming in to the church and asking for help, that's one thing. And then I think on an institutional level, we have to deal with the government. And as an institution, as a community, we have to keep saying the way we're going about this is not right, period. And it seems like we need to challenge more,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
it's funny you said, I mentioned earlier at lunch today, I was at a dinner 2 weeks ago and there were a few Catholic journalists and editors and it's like a 12-person dinner, but without giving too much away, one philanthropist is interested in funding something with the a group of nuns, I don't remember which order, to be part of the reaction to what we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
And they thought it was genius because who doesn't trust a nun, right? They're trustworthy.
Right.
And I went along with it, but what I reminded them is remember the nuns in The Sound of Music. Like they were the ones that took the carburetor when the Von Trapps were trying to get away from the Nazis. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And the
But
one nun
wasn't
says, like, sister, I have to make a confession. And she holds it up. Like, there's a
but wasn't
place.
that the Nazi carburetor? And that
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So they were trying to help the Von Trapps escape, and they
yeah.
did. But so there's a parallel, don't you think,
I
between the
the
world today and the role faith communities can
yeah.
play?
I think first of all, nuns have always been in the forefront.
Absolutely.
They've led us in education, they've led us in social justice. So I
True
think
service. Yeah.
even we need to listen closely to the
Amen.
sisters. And I think though, what would I say? I would say there is still a need for us to all read, I would say all the churches to come together, come up with a plan. And rather than spend all this money on ICE, how about if we start to look at the people who have been in the country for 15, 20
Contributing.
years and come up with a special category for them? Maybe they're not going to be citizens, but they're not going to be deported
They're scared.
or
Yeah.
scared. And I
Interesting
find,
idea. Yeah.
I know several undocumented people, and I am scared to death
For
for
them.
them.
Yeah.
And I think what I think the president is misreading a great deal. I mean, he was saying close the borders. We had to close the borders. You had I remember they had who was the Secretary of Homeland, whatever,
Known or
before him,
oh,
before her.
uh,
But he was saying, "Oh, we have the borders guarded. We're in charge." And you see, there's 5,000 people coming across in a day or
yeah.
something. So I don't know what drug he was on, but
Well, apparently Obama did turn more people back,
he did.
and the Trump administration has put the fear in on it so that
Yeah.
the illegal immigration has trickled down, I think. But still, it's a complex issue, not a quick fix. But I think you would agree it's not about demonizing people, any
No.
people.
And you hear these commercials, so and so,
Our tax dollars paying for those.
yeah, so and so came over and raped a 13-year-old girl or something. Well, there are a lot of American citizens that are doing that and more. And it's just this harshness that I
Yeah.
get offended
Yeah.
by.
So you said something a minute ago. Shout out to the nuns. I'm with you on that. And just for our audience, from my perspective, I think I understand why women are eligible to be ordained as priests, but they're still held in high regard, and there's a place. And that's the system that is the Catholic Church. So I respect that because a larger mission, the impact is good. But what would you say to those who might disagree, who don't fully understand? Why not let women rise into that topmost leadership role from a priest to even a pope one day?
Yeah, I that's one of those things I don't know, and I accept the church teaching from the very beginning
Yep,
that we didn't ordain women as priests.
fair enough.
Same at the same time, if you ask me who has had the most influence on the church and its members, it's the sisters.
Yeah.
So are we talking about a power play or are we talking about
A reinvention,
service?
yeah.
And I think the sisters are doing what they need to do and what they should be doing, and they do it well. And you look at some of the stuff that's going on over in the Vatican, and you find out how powerless the Pope is to
Right,
correct some of
right.
this stuff.
2000 years of a lot of stuff to
Entrenchment,
turn. So I'm
entrenchment.
reminded, as you say this, Isabella Rossellini in the film, the Conclave. Remember?
Yes,
She had very few words, but she spoke volumes, and she's kind of like that person you're talking about, one of the few only women, I think, in that whole movie, but
yeah.
a genius performance.
Is she the one that dropped the plate
Yes.
when she saw
Yeah.
the corrupt cardinal?
Yes. So tell me, demyth, what is one, if you want a myth bust here or a stereotype, is there one or a handful? Just give us one example of what people don't really understand about an ordained Catholic priest that is misunderstood or just misrepresented.
I think priests are individuals, and we're getting a conservative group coming in now. But for the most part, I think priests are free thinkers. They are very compassionate. They're really there to help people. And I've seen priests do incredible things for people. And a lot of a lot of it is not seen. Like I'll just give you a quick one. I had this guy I know went into the hospital and the emergency room. If you go in to an emergency room and you're not out of there in a few hours, you're dead. And he called me. He said, "Father, I've been here for 12 hours." So I called
Wow.
someone and I just said, so and so's, can you help him get a room? And he got a room. Now that's something that I did that there's no big fanfare on, but I can give you
But you speak and they respond.
or you do things quietly and there are good
There's a
results.
great way to do that, right?
Yeah.
Quietly. So I want to ask you, this we didn't talk about in advance, but you
We
mentioned
haven't
yesterday.
talked, all of this has not been in advance. Go ahead.
Well, so Father Bill Warren, we talked
Yes.
about, I knew him through you. He was a great priest. He was a mentor to you.
Yes.
And you shared with me yesterday that you, upon reflection, because he died many years ago, you thought that perhaps my words, not yours, you didn't really thank him enough or appreciate him enough, and you
Sure.
regret that. And I respectfully disagree because I think it was obvious to me that you two had this incredible, healthy, wonderful, nurturing relationship, and that he held you in high esteem and vice versa, and that never wavered. But just to do a shout out to Bill Warren and that, talk a little bit about that special relationship and what he meant, and maybe even how it ties
Well,
back to the church.
even before that, he came from Largemont, and his father was very successful on Wall Street. If anybody is a golfer, they know Wingfoot,
Yes, golf
and
course. Yep.
Bill's family home, their backyard went into the first hole of Wingfoot. And so here's somebody who could have done anything. He could have went into corporate business, he could have went into Wall Street, could have done all these things, and yet he chose to be a priest because he had this
Calling. Yeah.
very generous heart, and so he just helped so many people and exposed me to so many things that I would never have been exposed to being from Staten Island. That I look back now, and it was kind of quick.
Yeah.
We'd go here, we'd go there, we'd do this,
And
we'd
his
see
mom
that.
was often there with all of us. Yep.
Yeah, and so you almost, I think when you're younger, you don't have as great an
Appreciation.
appreciation of people as you do when you get older and you look back. And he's been dead now maybe 20 years, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of it. But I've also seen how in all of he was in St. Anthony's in Nanuet and St. Margaret of Cortona in Riverdale, how he worked to get the kids back into church and how he worked to keep the school going. And those are things that you just say, well, that's what a priest does, and he does. But it's also how wonderful it was for him to do that because he could have went in a way different direction.
Well, and it's
You know?
lovely to honor him here with this, but let me ask
Yeah.
you if you can take the compliment and the grace to say or own that you too have touched many, many lives like that, not just priests, but students in Catholic schools, the diocese that you've refurbished and gotten people back in and grown. I mean, you've left an incredibly positive wake, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I mean, you got to take the credit sometimes too. And I don't think
Yeah.
Bill would ever take the credit if you said it back then, but I agree with your observation. He was an exceptional man, as are you. And to do something of service like that, it
Sure.
sets a nice
And
example.
I'll tell you, we had a wonderful pastor in Blessed Sacrament on Staten Island, and there was a parade going by. I don't know what it was, Memorial Day parade or something. And he had two associates, and somebody came running up and said a man had a heart attack. And the two associates, who were probably 30 years younger, they both stood there like lugs. And he went and said, "Where's the oil? I need the oil." And we got the oil. He went out and anointed the man. And that's like he had the mindset and the heart of a priest. It was
Yeah, a
just that.
solution provider.
And I was lucky to be exposed to uh, Monsignor Haverty and Bill Warren, and that sticks with you. And you say, what kind of priest do I want to be? I want to be like them.
Yeah, good for you. So we're mindful of the time here, Patrick, but we've got two exciting things coming up, and I'll let you speak about one or both briefly. But one is you've now become a chaplain to Tunnel to Towers, which is an
Yeah.
amazing organization. And then there's the you're going to do the 2-week cruise in Holland America as sort of the chaplain on board.
Yes.
Exciting. Like one wouldn't think that being a priest would put you in these worlds and do these things, but they come clamoring and knocking on your door. So which one are you? Tell us a little bit about both, maybe. What are you excited
Well,
about and why?
I'll tell you. I said to someone when I got this cruise thing going, I said, I've never been on a boat before. And he said, Father, it's not a boat, it's a ship. The only boat I've been on was Staten Island Ferry. So it shows you
Humility.
what limited experience I've had.
And you didn't take a vow of poverty, did you?
No, but this is free, so it's not
I'm just
violating
joking.
anything.
All right, so
And
there's that. And then the tunnels to town.
well, the story there is there was a family named Siller, and they're from my home parish. And Stephen Siller was a fireman, and he got the call that a plane went into World Trade Center, and he put on his gear and he ran through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. He had 4 kids, a lovely wife, and he was killed there. And so you look at people like that, and what I think is incredible about the Silla family is that instead of becoming bitter and full of rage and hate, which they
Can
probably
happen,
were
yeah.
entitled to, they turned the thing around and look at what they're doing, building homes for veterans and
Yeah.
disabled veterans and
Yeah, they've
taking
gone
care.
well beyond just the 9/11 victims.
Yes,
It's veterans and other things, yeah.
and they're as humble as they can be.
And you're
So
going to be their new chaplain. Good for you.
yes,
So, Patrick, I'm mindful of your time. One last question we always ask our guests here on the Caring Economy is words of wisdom, pearls of wisdom. If you looking back on your life, your career, purpose-driven life and career, what sort of main lesson or lessons have you learned that you'd share with others?
I would say be aware of a situation not only aware, but be grateful for it. And we cannot say thank you enough to people for who they are and what they mean to us.
So being aware, like there's an opportunity, and there's two sides to everything. There could be either a challenge or an opportunity.
Yeah, I'll give you, there's a Route 21 that goes into Route 280 that goes into the turnpike that brings me home. And one day I was driving down with a priest, and there were people there that have cups out. And he said, "Look at those people. They should be working, blah, 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 blah." I always have quarters, and so they always get a couple of quarters. The next day, I was with the priest, and he said, "Look at those poor people. What in God's name could they have gone through that would reduce them to that?"
Mm.
And we're looking at the same people,
Two different perspectives, yeah.
two different perspectives. And I think the second perspective is what God would say, what happened? What were they missing when they were growing
Yeah.
up? The difference between me and them, or
But
them
for
and
the grace of God, yeah.
I got an education. I had two stable parents. I had faith that was given to me. And for some reason, they didn't get that. So we have to say thank you for who we are and thank people as we see them for little things, opening the door. I mean, I am mindful of that in the morning.
Always.
Who can I say thank you to?
Yeah, yeah. I love that. So Father Patrick Ryan, priest for decades, a good friend of mine, really the greatest sense of pastors. You are shepherding flocks left, right, and center, and I'm grateful to know you. And I look forward to hearing about how the cruise goes.
So it's a big difference from the Staten Island ferry.
Yes, it is. But hug, bring it in.
Thank you, so God bless. Okay.
Likewise.